To me, success isn't about wealth or status. It's about refinement, forged through obstacles, challenges, pain, and the moments you almost gave up. I know a lot about success not because I've always achieved it, but because I've faced failure far too many times. Everyone wants to succeed, but to truly understand success, you must learn to endure more than you ever gain from it. Because success isn't measured by what you hold in your hands, but by what you've had to overcome to get there. Her name is Lan. She graduated from a college of education with a major in English. In her heart, she carried a simple yet sacred dream: to stand on the podium, to hold a piece of white chalk, and write the very first letters on the blackboard for her students. To her, teaching was not just a profession, but a calling. However, the reality after graduation was far from easy. After finishing school, she sent her job applications to schools all over, from the city to the outskirts. After a long wait, she was finally hired, but only on a short-term contract with no tenure and no stable benefits. She was paid per lesson, exactly 5,000 VND per class. Even on days she worked from dawn to dusk, her monthly pay was only 1/3 that of full-time teachers. Yet every time she stood in front of a class, all her worries seemed to fade away. Her voice remained calm and earnest. Her chalk lines were straight and white as ever. When a student asked about an old lesson, she patiently explained again. When students misbehaved, she didn't scold them, only gently advised. To her, every lesson was a seed, and each student a patch of soil. No matter how barren the land or how small the seed, she believed one day it would sprout, grow leaves, and blossom. Lan got married through a matchmaking arrangement, carrying with her the hope of joining a kind and supportive family. She believed that as long as there was mutual understanding, love, and sharing, even a marriage that didn't begin with love could still blossom and bear fruit. But reality turned out to be far harsher than she had imagined. Married life was nothing like a dream. Her husband not only lacked empathy, but openly looked down on her. Whenever he was upset, he would lash out with harsh words, even raising his hand to hit her without hesitation. Lan's job was unstable and poorly paid. Meanwhile, her husband's business ventures kept failing. He jumped from job to job, yet debts only piled up. He was often drunk, and every time he came home, he brought with him the stench of alcohol and bursts of baseless anger, taking it all out on her. When Lan had her first child, she felt the loneliness of her marriage even more deeply. Her husband had taken up a job as a long-distance truck driver, a demanding and dangerous profession. She had hoped that fatherhood would bring about a change in him, but it didn't. He was rarely home during the day, and even at night, exhausted or indifferent, he offered little help. Lan had to care for the baby entirely on her own. From preparing every bottle of milk to spoon-feeding porridge, from sleepless nights soothing her crying child, it was all her. On days when the baby fell ill with a fever, she trembled with anxiety, checking the temperature over and over, her heart tightening. At every wheezing breath, her husband was either away on the road or lying drunk somewhere, completely disengaged. One time she carried her child out of the house in a panic, tears still on her face when her husband rushed at her and beat her violently. With no other choice, she ran barefoot into the night, clutching her child, her heart breaking with every step. Her mother's house wasn't far away, and when the door opened, it felt like the last refuge in the world. Her mother said nothing, just pulled her into an embrace, trembling as she stroked the hair of the wailing grandchild. She collapsed onto the floor, body drained, heart still, pounding in fear. Outside, dogs barked in the distance as if echoing the nightmare she had just escaped. Neighbors, friends, even relatives told her, "Get a divorce. Why stay and suffer?" The words floated by like a breeze, but to her they were a blade, driven deep into her chest. They didn't know how many times she had stood on the edge of leaving. She had packed her clothes into a suitcase, written the divorce papers only to tuck them away, spent countless sleepless nights listening to the sound of her own sighs. Over and over, she asked herself, should I leave or should I stay? The man she once trusted completely had become a stranger in the very home they built together. Cold, indifferent, and at times his words cut her so deeply she wept in silence over the evening meal. There was no cheating, just a lingering loneliness that wrapped around her like morning frost clinging to her fragile back. She could leave. She had every reason to walk away from the crumbling marriage. But then, she looked at her child. That little one still smiled when seeing both parents at the table, still beamed with joy when Daddy picked them up from school, still innocently drew pictures of the three of them holding hands beneath a shared roof. She couldn't do it. Because of her child, she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because the love of a mother can bear more than anyone knows. Even if her pillow soaked with tears each night, even if her soul felt as hollow as an unlit room, she knew that one day when her child was old enough to understand, she would choose a different path, one for herself. But today, she chose to stay, not because she had no choice, but because her love for her child was greater than the pain within her. The day her two little ones confidently walked into preschool was also the day she quietly packed a small bag and left her hometown to work overseas in Malaysia. She knew this journey was a trade-off, perhaps a year, maybe many, just to earn enough money to send home, hoping her children could have a future less burdensome than her own. She signed a contract through a labor broker. They promised her everything: an easy job at a packaging factory, a basic salary, and decent accommodation. She believed them. She had no experience, spoke only a little English, and held nothing but a fragile hope in something better. But when she arrived, the dream shattered like cheap glass. There was no factory, no production line. Instead, she was taken to a rundown dormitory and assigned to janitorial work at a shopping center, cleaning floors from dawn till late into the night, with no days off. The pay was meager. The meals were plain and sparse. Every time she called home, her child would ask with excitement, "When are you coming back, Mama?" She smiled through the pain, hiding her tears. "Mama's still busy with work. When I'm free, I'll come home to you." Some nights, as she scrubbed the floors under the dim glow of fluorescent lights, her hands blistered from cleaning chemicals, her feet aching from hours of standing, she broke down and cried. Cried like a child. Not just from exhaustion, but from a deep, aching sorrow. Because once again, life had betrayed her, even when all she ever wished for was something so simple: to be a mother and to raise her children well. But she didn't give up, because she still had her children. And for them, even far from home, even betrayed, even in pain, she kept going. But she didn't let her tears drown her. After long nights of exhaustion, after breaking down beside the hum of the vacuum, she told herself, "Crying won't give my children a better future. Only standing up will change anything." She began learning how to communicate in English, starting with simple phrases to her supervisor, then small talk with customers at the mall. At first, she spoke slowly, hesitantly, and was often misunderstood. One day, a customer snapped at her, "Are you stupid?" She stood there, silent, face burning, eyes welling up, but she didn't cry. That night, she pulled out a pocket dictionary, wrote down the words in a small notebook, and whispered them to herself until she remembered. Outside of cleaning hours, she took a side job doing data entry for a small nearby shop. The pay was low, but it gave her a chance to work with a computer, to learn Excel, type documents. At night, while others slept, she watched YouTube tutorials on how to write a resume, send a proper email, apply for jobs in English. She slowly realized to survive in this place, muscle alone wasn't enough. She needed skills. She needed to know more than just how to scrub a floor. Once, when her child back home fell sick, she couldn't go back. All she could do was video call, watching her child struggle to breathe, hearing her own mother sob quietly on the other end. She felt helpless. But in that helplessness, she also found clarity. If I don't try harder, this helplessness will. never go away. The school of life in a foreign land taught her to grow up, through hardship, through strangers' cold voices, through the sting of being looked down on just because she was a migrant worker. But from that very place, she began to rise, slowly, steadily, and she kept going. For her children, for the future, and for herself. A woman who refused to be just another victim of fate. 3 years later, she returned to Vietnam. She had nothing but an old suitcase, a few faded clothes, a modest grasp of English, and a will forged through countless hard days in a foreign land. But those seemingly small things were exactly what opened the door to a new chapter of her life. No longer the timid girl from the countryside, she stepped into the city with steady eyes and a quiet determination to live a different life. She applied for a job at a logistics company, starting as a documentation assistant. Her English wasn't perfect, but it was enough to read emails, translate contracts, and, most importantly, she wasn't afraid to ask questions or to learn. By day she worked. By night, she enrolled in courses on import-export operations. The management skills she had unknowingly picked up during her years in Malaysia, scheduling, problem-solving, reading people, became unexpected advantages that helped her progress faster than others. No one knew that behind this punctual, diligent, quiet woman was a past of scrubbing floors at midnight, of silent tears in a foreign country, of sending home every last coin to help her children stay in school. She returned, without wealth or titles, but she came back with strength. 1 year after returning home, she was promoted to head of import-export by the company's leadership, not because she was the best, but because she never stopped trying. She never turned down a task, never hesitated to ask questions, and never ended a day without learning something new. And once again, a new door opened. 2 years later, fueled by the experience she had gained and the relationships she had built, through trust and hard work, she made a bold decision to start her own company. At that time, she had almost nothing, except the quiet courage of someone who had grown up through hardship and a deep desire to take charge of her own life. Her first office was just a tiny rented room, barely 20 square meters. The desks and chairs were borrowed from an old friend. She was the director, the sales rep, the accountant, the receptionist, all in one. Nothing was handed to her. Everything started from zero. She found clients on her own, reached out to foreign partners, negotiated every small deal herself. There were days she rode her motorbike under the scorching sun just to deliver documents. Nights she stayed up drafting contracts with a deadline looming at sunrise. But she never complained. To her, each step was a brick laid, building a foundation for something she could finally call her own. Some customers came and left. Some doubted her, dismissing her as just an outsider. But a few believed in her. And from those first sparks of belief, she began to build credibility. One shipment, one signature, one relationship at a time. From a small office and a handful of hard-earned deals, her company slowly began to grow, just like she had. From dreams once shattered, she was now creating something real. Since returning to Vietnam, what she longed for most wasn't a stable job or a second chance at success. It was to hold her child in her arms again. The day they reunited, the little one who used to cling to her voice through a phone screen had grown taller, thinner, and his eyes sparkled when he saw her. He didn't ask why she'd been gone so long. He didn't complain about the missed calls. He just hugged her, tightly, as if trying to erase the years they'd lost. And her husband, the man who once made her want to walk away from everything, had changed too. There were no grand apologies, no flowery promises. But he quietly drove her to work, picked up their child when she was busy, and sometimes left a warm meal waiting for her on the table. These small things, once rare and distant, had become the moments that now touched her heart the most. She didn't ask why. He changed. She didn't need to. She simply accepted it. Because more than anyone she knew, people can change if they truly want to hold on to what's slipping away. Their family wasn't perfect, but since the day they reunited, life had become a little gentler. Finances improved. Their child studied well. The couple learned to listen more, speak softer, and laughter began to return to the house that had once felt so cold. She used to think happiness was something far away, but in the end, happiness turned out to be quite simple: a warm home, people learning how to love each other the right way, and a shared willingness to begin again, starting with the smallest things.